Benchmark, the voice of business. Presented by LMD.
On this edition of Benchmark, our first guest for 2015, former UN Under-Secretary General for Disarmament Affairs Jayantha Dhanapala, details his wish list for this year. Then Shaheen Carter, Nielsen's managing director, analyzes the BCI, which remains unmoved. And finally, we take a look at Sri Lanka's macro outlook with economist and LMD columnist Deshal Dimel. That's the lineup for Benchmark.
Hello and welcome to Benchmark's very first program for 2015. We'd like to wish all of you from the Benchmark team a very happy, peaceful and prosperous New Year. I'm Savitri Rodrigo. As is customary, our first guest for the year is former UN Under-Secretary General for Disarmament Affairs, Jayantha Dhanapala. He's a former senior diplomat. He's also the president of the Pugwash Conferences on Science and World Affairs, which won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1995. He was awarded recently the International Achievement Award for Nuclear Disarmament, and he is also a member of the Friday Forum chapter in Sri Lanka. So today he's going to be talking about or discussing a range of subjects which would take us forward into 2015. Welcome and a Happy New Year to you, Mr. Dhanapala.
A Happy New Year to you and to the program and to the viewers.
What's on your wish list for 2015?
Well, my first and most fervent wish is that the people of Sri Lanka will have a free and fair presidential election on the 8th of January and that it will be violence-free. The right to vote is a sacred right in any democracy, and it must be used wisely and with responsibility. It would be abdicating your duty if you declined to vote for whatever reason. Voter apathy is not acceptable in a modern, vibrant society like Sri Lanka, particularly since we are facing very critical decisions as we make a selection from amongst the 19 individuals who have presented their nomination papers. It is a crucial election because it is the first election being held after the 18th Amendment was passed. It is also the first election after the repeal of the 17th Amendment. And we have therefore the need to be vigilant with regard to having a free and fair election.
If you were looking at the key priorities that the newly elected president should be focusing on, what would they be?
I think the importance is to ensure that democracy, the rule of law, good governance is made meaningful to every citizen equally and without any discrimination. That must also translate into ensuring the rights of information, right of free speech, right of having a equal distribution of resources throughout the island so that every citizen of Sri Lanka is able to have a fulfilling life economically, politically, and in every other way. And this, I think, would entail having a proper redistribution of wealth, ensuring that we do not have an economy that only favors some segments of society, but that it favors all segments of society, and that our youth can look forward to a bright and prosperous future.
What are the key sensitivities that the country must be looking out for in the year ahead if we are looking at our image abroad, cultural and ethnic diversity, our development objectives? If we look at all those, what are the key sensitivities?
The key sensitivities are first and foremost the need to maintain human rights impeccably. Not because fingers are being pointed at us by the Human Rights Council in Geneva, which in March again will look at the report on our investigation and make decisions as to what should be done with regard to Sri Lanka. But for our own good and for the interests of our citizens, we need to ensure that the human rights of every citizen should be preserved, protected, and promoted. This is something that is vital in any democracy, and we have paid inadequate attention to it. It is not a question of satisfying Western critics, but satisfying our own people that their human rights are protected. In addition to that, we must ensure that economic development is even-handed and that it benefits all the people of the country, not just the South or the Colombo-based elite, but all the people of Sri Lanka. And finally, I think we must ensure that we do not fall down on achieving some of the fundamental freedoms of democracy, including freedom of the press, the freedom of information, and the freedom to disagree with the government. You must be confident that you will not be labeled a traitor if you disagree with the government, because that is a right of every citizen to dissent. And this can be done within the democratic framework of our country. And these freedoms are essential in order for us to continue to be a vibrant democracy.
When you're talking about development, for instance, we are looking at Sri Lanka having set fairly ambitious goals. Lots of aggressive key performance indicators we're supposed to be achieving. But at the same time, at what cost? Are we well positioned to achieve a sustainable, inclusive growth that really takes all citizenry into the future?
And I think it's important for us to have total transparency with regard to statistics, because there have been queries with regard to the accuracy of some of the statistics that have been quoted by the government. And I think it's important for the general population to have confidence in the statistics that are being produced and to make sure that those statistics really translate into meaningful, realistic data. The second point is that we must be sure that we are not pandering to an international climate in which we are attracting very quick investments which want to make money, such as the casino industry, which has been one of those industries that have been targeted by the government, which can cause enormous social damage to the country. And so the investment that you get into the country must genuinely benefit the people and not result in a quick buck for those who come in to make money for their particular investments. I think we have to select our investors wisely and well, and they must also directly benefit the productive capacity of our people. They must be in tune with the natural resources of our country and must ensure that there is no exploitation, that our people also have a fair share of participating in the development of our resources.
So after our commercial break, Jayantha Dhanapala returns to discuss the most exciting prospect of Sri Lanka at the Cricket World Cup, and also Sri Lanka's image and on global affairs, all the information and data that we can glean from Mr. Dhanapala on global affairs. Stay with us.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC.
As soon as my salary goes into my H&B account, my family goes shopping just like a power play. Now with H&B mobile banking, wherever you are in the world, you can check your account balance and do your banking with ease. Wherever I am in the world, H&B is active on my mobile and tab 24 hours a day. H&B mobile banking. Bank anywhere from any mobile.
Thank you for staying with Benchmark. We now continue our very interesting discussion with former US senior diplomat Jayantha Dhanapala. Mr. Dhanapala, this is our national pastime, cricket. In terms of Sri Lanka's this obsession with cricket, how would you assess the country's chances at the upcoming World Cup?
I think they are very good. The fact that we won the T20 last year, I think, is an indication of our prowess and our capacity to once again win the World Cup that we last won in 1996. Our stars, Mahela Jayawardena, Kumar Sangakkara, Dilshan, and our bowlers are all in peak form. And teamwork, I think, is the key to our success. That teamwork was very evident in our T20 victory. The older players blend very well with the younger talent that we have discovered. And with Malinga once again fit and well, I'm sure that we will do very well. And certainly our performance, particularly against the English team in Sri Lanka in 2014, where we convincingly won the series, and what we are going to do, of course, in Australia and New Zealand, I think, is a key to the way in which we are going to perform at the World Cup.
Governance is not just for the public and private sectors, it also is in cricket. Tell me a little bit about how governance plays a role in cricket.
There, I must say, we have failed in ensuring that our cricket administration is as efficient as our players have been. And I think it's a remarkable tribute to our players that they have borne a lot of vicissitudes inflicted on them by the cricket administration for a long time. There have been instances where their payments have been delayed, where a number of strange decisions have been taken with regard to their ability to play for Sri Lanka, and not discouraged by that, they have continued to play well for Sri Lanka. I think we need to have a radical reform of our cricket administration and ensure that competent people with an understanding of the game should be there, and not people who are trying to politicize the administration of cricket.
You know, there are lots of global rankings in which Sri Lanka is featured, whether it's the corruption index, ease of doing business index. In some, Sri Lanka does well. In some, we don't do that well. Ease of doing business, for instance, we dropped down some points last year. Do you think we have it in us to actually keep improving those global rankings? And how important is it when you look at the country, when the world looks at the country in a holistic sense?
Absolutely. I think the average Sri Lankan is a competent, educated, efficient individual and ranks very well with the international community. What has happened is that our politicians have not allowed our full potential to develop and to bloom in the world. Corruption index, of course, is largely a problem that can be associated with the politics of our country. And that has to change. We have very good laws on the books with regard to corruption, but it does not, in fact, get implemented. Our bribery commission is supposedly informed about a lot of the cases. We have been told that the president has files on a lot of people. But why aren't those files then made available to the bribery commissioner for him to pursue them? We also hear lots of stories about bribery, and I must say the bribery is not a question of only receiving bribes, of giving bribes. And here our private sector must look within themselves to see how they contribute towards the bribery and corruption that is rampant in Sri Lanka, whether they are not also equally guilty with regard to this kind of bribery. So there is a lot that can be done to clean up the situation in the country. And we have a lot of competition internationally. India is turning a new leaf with Prime Minister Modi, who is a very business oriented Gujarati. He is going to transform India. And we can benefit from that because as India develops its business model, I think Sri Lanka has a lot to gain. And we need to therefore develop our ties with India, economic ties particularly. We need to likewise keep abreast of other BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, South Africa and China. And with the Southeast Asian countries, we need to help to transform Asia into the miracle that it is becoming.
We've come into 2015 with the conflicts in Israel, Palestine, Syria, Ukraine, Iraq, everything possible, Hong Kong's uprisings, Thailand, we've seen that happen. The chances are these things will continue to happen. Do you see any progress being made in that all-important phrase of world peace?
I think we must all work to construct a world peace. It is not something that individual countries can do. It's a collective endeavor because it's a collective peace, it's a cooperative peace, because collective security is the key to the Charter of the United Nations. And international peace and security requires contributions from everybody. We know that there has been a very serious problem with regard to the Middle East. And I think the spread of religious extremism in the Middle East in particular has been a major drawback in international peace and security. What has happened in Nigeria, what has happened in Syria and Iraq, and in so many parts of the world are really going back to the Stone Age. We have a kind of brutality and barbarism that was unthinkable in the past. But even the most sophisticated nations still retain vast arsenals which can cause enormous amount of catastrophe in the country, in the world, and I mean the nuclear weapons. There is also the catastrophe of climate change that hangs over our heads unless we make a radical change with regard to the consumption of fossil fuels and CO2 emissions. We have the reports of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and a major conference is coming up in Paris this year, 2015. We need to have agreement, both developed countries and developing countries, on making changes in our lifestyles so that the world is saved the climate change that is inevitable unless something is done.
Are there any headwinds that Sri Lanka needs to be on the lookout for in 2015? Any global headwinds?
Yes, I think it's important for us to ensure that the two giants in Asia, India and China, work in harmony. And at the moment, those two countries have excellent trade relations and economic relations, and they are growing. And it's in their mutual interest to maintain this harmony, which I think Sri Lanka also can participate in. We must ensure that outside regional powers do not try to muddy the waters. There are problems, of course, territorial disputes between China and some of the Asian countries, but we have to maintain equal relations with China, with Japan, with India, with Pakistan and all the other Southeast Asian countries, while retaining our ties to the West and of course maintaining our age-old relationship with India. I think it is possible for us to do this, but for that we need a clearly conceived foreign policy and a foreign policy implemented by a professional team of trained diplomats.
As a final question to this program, realistically speaking, Mr. Dhanapala, where do you see Sri Lanka by the end of 2015?
By the end of 2015, where we will be will depend very much on the decision taken on the 8th of January, because the election of a president is a very important election in the life of the country. And I think and I hope that we will be a very robust democracy with human rights that will be implemented fully for all citizens of Sri Lanka, And with our people living a economically developed life, with our resources being fully utilized for our own benefits, and our people being able to achieve full employment and a happy and satisfied life.
Thank you very much. We hope your wishes come true, and a happy new year to you once again.
Same to you. Thank you.
That was our look ahead for 2015 with former senior diplomat Jayantha Dhanapala. On the other side, we have Shaheen Khadr, Managing Director of Nielsen, who will give you the latest on the BCI, and economist and LMD columnist Deshal Dimel will speak to you on the economy. He is wishing you a really great 2015 ahead.
Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC. Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC.
As soon as my salary goes into my HNB account, my family goes shopping just like a power play. Now with HNB mobile banking, wherever you are in the world, you can check your account balance and do your banking with ease. Wherever I am in the world, HNB is active on my mobile and tab 24 hours a day. HNB mobile banking. Bank anywhere from any mobile.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Anushan Selvaraja. Let's take a closer look now at the latest business confidence index with the managing director of Nielsen, Shaheen Khadr. So, Shaheen, BCI is down for the 3rd consecutive month now. What are the reasons behind this trend?
Yes, Anushan, I think still the issue remains the basic price of goods and services being, this has resulted in the last few months index dropping. But I think there is some sort of light at the end of the tunnel, because we see from Nielsen retail audit data that the people are now starting to buy more FMCG items at least than they were. So I think with that the consumer confidence will increase, and thereby we should see an increase in business confidence.
Where do respondents stand in terms of the economy?
Yeah, Anushan, interestingly, while the business confidence index has actually declined a bit, the business respondents are still optimistic about the economy. I think this is, you see visible signs of development basically in terms of roads, airports, ports, combined with urban development. I think, so therefore, I think with all these developments, I think respondents do see the economy as improving.
How would you describe the sentiments regarding investment, Shaheen?
In October, Anushan, there was a slight increase in optimism about the investment climate compared with the previous 3 months. In the previous 3 months, actually, there was no change in these perceptions.
What are your near-term projections for the BCI?
No, I believe the BCI would creep upwards, because I think we had the salary increases to government employees, relief on electricity and fuel costs. Therefore, which means that there is more money for consumers to spend, and therefore buy more.
That was the Managing Director of Nielsen, Shaheen Khadr. After a short commercial break, we will be back with the latest on the economy with economist and LMD columnist Deshal Dimel. Stay tuned.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC.
As soon as my salary goes into my HNB account, my family goes shopping just like a power play. Now with HNB mobile banking, wherever you are in the world, you can check your account balance and do your banking with ease. Wherever I am in the world, HNB is active on my mobile and tab 24 hours a day. HNB mobile banking. Bank anywhere from any mobile.
Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm Anushan Selvaraja. Let's take a closer look at the economy now with economist and LMD columnist Dashal Dimel. So Dashal, how has the economy fared by the end of 2014?
Yeah, Anushan, towards the latter part of the year, as we had anticipated earlier as well, things have picked up. We've seen that in terms of credit growth. Indications are that maybe consumption has improved as well. We've seen imported consumption growing as well. At the same time, inflation has remained quite low, supported by the reduction in some of the administered prices, particularly on energy. So it looks like there's been a much-needed boost given to disposable incomes of consumers as well. So that's been a positive going in towards the latter part of the year. It will be interesting to see to what extent this is a cyclical effect or as opposed to a structural effect. My gut feeling is that there is a significant cyclical portion in this involved, because if you look at since 2013, there's probably been a fair amount of pent-up demand that is now beginning to be exercised. So it will remain to be seen whether this is going to be sustained going forward as well.
How does household income growth tie into the current economic setting?
What we have seen in the last few years is Sri Lanka's GDP growing at a fairly robust level. We've seen in 2010 and 11 8% plus, and if you look at the last 5 years in general, there's been an average growth of around 6.5% per year. What we haven't seen is that same level of growth when we compare it with, say, the per capita, the household income. Now, the Department of Census and Statistics puts out every 3 years the Household and Income Expenditure Survey. And according to that, if you look at between 2006 and 2012, household incomes have grown by an average of about 0.5% per annum. So this is in real terms when you discount inflation. So this is significantly lower than the growth rate that we've seen in, say, per capita GDP. And that is, I think, one of the reasons why we probably haven't seen the same level of consumption growth in the economy in the last couple of years, because the anticipated growth that would have come through, if you look at judging by, say, GDP growth, hasn't really filtered down to the same extent at the household level.
Dasha, what economic reforms are warranted in this new year?
So if we look at it in terms of what we just spoke about in terms of, say, household income, what we have seen in the economy in the last, several decades is large pockets of relatively unproductive labor, right? And to give you a couple of examples, in the agricultural sector, for instance, you have the agriculture sector accounting for about 10% of GDP, but about 30% of the labor force. So that indicates that there is a significant amount of productivity, a lack of productivity within that sector. And I think that is one area where certainly reform can take place. To give you an example, at present, a lot of Sri Lanka's agriculture is focused on the domestic economy, whereas there's significant value to be gained by looking at, say, export-oriented value chains. But right now, the structure of, say, tariffs and prices, which are often administered in the agriculture sector, isn't really encouraging of moving into the exportable agricultural sector. So I think we need to look at the way that we do agricultural pricing, the high levels of protection that we have for agriculture. We ought to probably look at a system where we don't try to be self-sufficient in everything that we do, and whereas be focused on selective areas of agriculture where we can be more productive, and thereby generate higher incomes for those who are involved in agriculture. And I think that is one way in which we can overall look at shifting, improving household incomes by creating greater efficiency, greater output per worker and greater productivity, because that translates into higher wages, and higher wages is what really translates into household income. So not just the agricultural sector, but in general we need to shift away from industries that we've been protecting over a long period of time, gradually move towards move away from, say, import substitution industries, and focus on areas where Sri Lanka can be genuinely productive and can compete in global terms.
That was economist and LMD columnist Deshal Dimel. Thank you for watching Benchmark, and we hope to see you again next time.